Join me today as I work on my raised bed to prepare it for onion planting season. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Horticulture Geek. I'm Ray, and thank you so much for joining me today here in the garden. Now, as you just heard, today I'm trying to get my raised bed here ready to get my onions planted. It is onion planting time here in Central Arkansas, Zone 7B. If you're in the 7B or above, so 7, 8, 9, 10 ranges, onions should be going in the ground if they're not already in the ground. If you're in lower zones, 6, 5, 4, 3, you still have a little bit of time to wait, but your time is coming. And in zones 6, you can go ahead and plant them too. Just check with your local garden centers or whatnot, or if you don't know. But it's time to start planting, and this year I am going to be planting my onions in this raised bed. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I've had some issues with this raised bed. When I built it, this is just an opened bottom raised bed that I filled with soil, which is fantastic and easily can be done under the right conditions. Unfortunately, I don't have the right conditions for that. So, and here's why. It's because unbeknownst to me, I had a mole and vole problem here in my garden. They had never really bothered stuff up in my garden here. I think that may be because of the big wall, but nevertheless they were here. And so by having that open bottom, they were able to crawl up inside my raised beds and eat my plants out from the roots. So I lost a bunch of crops in here 2 years ago. And so last year, if you were with me, you saw me dig this out, removed all the dirt, dug it out, and I lined it with hardware cloth, just metal hardware cloth that would prevent critters from coming up inside my raised bed and eating my plants from the bottom. And I thought, awesome, that was great. Then last year, I had an issue. This right here, there's a gigantic oak tree in my neighbor's yard right there. And then I had a grapevine planted right on the fence down there. The roots from that grapevine and that oak tree found this super nutrient rich soil that was very well watered, and their roots went nuts in it, to the point where the entire 20-foot raised bed was so jumbled with roots from that grapevine and oak tree that none of my crops in this bed last year were able to survive. They all went with water deficiencies because every drop of water that went in here, those massive tangles of roots just absorbed before my poor little plants could really get anything from it. So now I'm left with digging it back out again and lining it with a landscape fabric. So if you are in the market to build a raised bed, if your raised beds are going to be out in the middle of a field where there's no root competition coming up into them, if you don't have a mole or vole problem, putting something on the bottom of your raised bed is not necessary. But in some situations, it is. Now, I would caution anyone from putting plastic in the bottom of their raised bed. I know some YouTube channels will go out when they make their huge raised bed gardens. They'll go out and get old billboard tarps or just regular tarps, that plasticky material, rolls of visqueen, and lay it all out on the ground to kill the grass, and they'll build their raised beds right on top of it. Unfortunately, what you're doing if you do that is you're preventing the soil in your raised beds from interacting with the soil below the plastic. And so water tricculation down, water getting down can be stopped, and nutrients and earthworms and minerals coming up can be stopped. So a plastic layer, in my personal humble opinion, not necessarily a good idea. So I would shoot with the landscape fabric, the hardware cloth, or maybe a cardboard. Putting cardboard down to stop grass that will eventually deteriorate and won't stop water exchange or nutrient exchange or let good earthworms and stuff come through. Much safer route. So that's where I'm at. Lesson learned for me, and hopefully if you're new to gardening and considering raised beds, that will help save you a step too. Because obviously when you nail these boxes together, it is super easy to put hardware cloth and landscape fabric right on the bottom of it, as opposed to having to dig these things back out and fix the problem, which I've had to do twice now. So here is my process. I'm just digging out the raised beds and I'm putting the dirt in my sifter and then I'm sifting it out. And so this pile right here is actually some of the roots. So you can see all these jumble of roots. I mean, this huge pile is what is coming out of this raised bed, just a mess. So that's the project I'm working on right now. So I'm going to just kind of let the camera roll for a minute and let you watch this process. Here we go. All right, so as you can see, this is a time-consuming and a little bit tedious process. So I am going to just kind of chop it here, and I'll be back with you in just a second for the rest of the video. I'm gonna work on sifting the rest of this soil for this section that I need. Now, when you saw me take my sifter behind the shed, that's my compost pile back there. So basically, the things that were too chunky to work through the sifter but weren't invasive roots and nastiness, okay, I picked all that out. The rest was just good organic matter, chunks of bark, nuggets, and things that were just left over in the soil. So all that I just put in my compost pile, and that'll work into the compost pile and help it break down, and then I'll have even better soil later once that finishes. So for right now, I've got a little bit more to dig out, and then I'll be ready to lay out my landscape fabric and get the dirt shoved over into the rest of the section. So I'll be right back to talk about that. All right, so I've got the raised bed cleaned out as promised, and I've got that soil sifted. So let me flip the camera around and show you what this is actually looking like. So here we go. All right, so I'm working on this section right to here. So you can see how I've dug down here into this raised bed. And I've dug down to the hardware cloth. There's hardware cloth right there. You can kind of see the metal grid. And so that's all that I needed to do. And now I've got this landscape fabric right there. And I've already done this half of the bed. And so now I just need to cut my landscape fabric and then move this soil over and then bring in some other amendments, and we're almost ready to start planting our onions. But I want you to just look at this soil here. Beautifully fluffy, rich soil. Now, even though this was full of roots and mess and debris, this is still a really good soil, because I started with a really good soil in this bed, and I amend this soil every year. So this is not a situation, even though it was just absolutely filled with roots, there's still good life left in this soil. So that's why I'm sifting it as opposed to just digging it out and getting rid of it altogether. And plus, an amount of soil to fill a raised bed like this is a very expensive endeavor. So I'm gonna save this and we're just gonna amend it up. So let me get my camera set back up and we'll get this landscape fabric trimmed, get this dirt sifted around, and then get some amendments brought in. Here we go. All right, so as you can see, I've got the bed prepared. Now, onions are a crop that requires a lot of nutrients. You have to feed your onions in order to get them to grow. And onions also need a fairly loose soil. So if you want to plant onions can go in raised beds. They can actually go directly into the ground. But if you have a hard, thick clay soil, they're not going to bulb out for you. They need a fairly loose or workable soil, and it needs to be super rich. And then you're gonna additionally feed your onion crops, fertilize them throughout the course of the growing season because they just need that energy to bulk up. So like I said, I started with good dirt, sifted it out so it's nice and fluffy. Then I added in some peat humus compost, and then I added in some new vegetable garden bed soil, and that had a existing nutrients mix in it. So that was a pre-fertilized soil that I put in it. And then I put earthworm castings in there as well, which are super good for crops. So now I've got all this section of bed completely prepared, ready to go. All that's left is to plant my onions. Now I'm running out of daylight today, and I kind of want this soil to settle a little bit, because right now it is super, super fluffy, okay? And so if I try to put my onion sets into this ground now, there's a strong chance that with any little breeze or anything, those onion sets are just gonna flop right over. So I'm gonna let this bed settle out overnight, and then we'll come back tomorrow on a new day and get the onion sets planted and get them watered in. Here we go. All right, guys, so it's been a few seconds for you, but it has been a whole nother day for me. And I have let the soil in this bed kind of just decompress, rest a little bit, so it's nice and settled in. Now, I've got to add some biotone. So you just saw me add all of that good new fresh dirt, some compost, some stuff. I'm still gonna put some biotone in here because, again, onions are heavy feeders, and I want to give my onions the best chance possible to form those big, beautiful onion bulbs, okay? So I'm just gonna get some biotone here and work that into this bed. All right, and then I can just use my hand and work that into the top layer of dirt. All right, so here are my onions. I have 3 varieties this year. I've got a red candy apple. I've got a Texas super sweet, and I've got a regular white candy. Okay, all of my onions come from Dixondale Farms down in Texas. Very great company to order from, and I am ordering onion sets. You can grow onions from seed. I don't take the time to do that. It is a relatively simple process. You just have to take the time to do it. Now, here is the catch with onions. If you have ever seen like your just traditional medium to large size onions that you buy at your grocery store, that's the size that these onions are gonna get, because these are onion sets. If you've ever seen gigantic, massive onions, those are grown from seed, okay? And here's the reason why, is because onions are a biennial crop, which means I plant the seed the first year. The onion spends as much energy as it can to put roots in the ground and form its bulb, and its bulb is gonna be its hub. And out in the wild, this is gonna go dormant that winter, and then that next season, it's going to grow fresh new greenery, and then it's going to produce onion flowers that second season and onion seed, okay? And then after that onion plant has produced that seed, its second year, then it's done, and that plant it will die, okay? So if you are growing onions from seed, you have first year onions, and those will get big if you let them. If you grow from onion sets, these sets were grown last year, gotten to this size, harvested, and let go dormant, okay? So even though these did not set massive onion bulbs, these are still second year plants. So when I plant these this year, they will continue, they will form the plant this year, they will form an onion head, but they're gonna start putting energy into flowering and setting seed. And as soon as that happens, that onion plant, the bulb that we're looking to harvest, will stop growing, okay? So that is the takeaway here with onions. If you are wanting to grow huge, massive, win a blue ribbon at the fair, at the county fair onions, you're gonna need to grow them from seed. If you're just looking for a good harvest of onions for your family, and you don't want to go through all the trouble of getting the seeds, thinning the seeds, separating the seeds, potting up, whatever, then you can just go with sets. That's my rule of thumb. Okay, now that we've talked about that, onions want to be planted about an inch deep or a knuckles length deep, a little bit more. So let me pull one of these out, and I've talked about all this on previous videos, and I will actually link that previous video here if you want to go look at it, where I talk about a lot of things about growing onions. But if you look at an onion set here, you can clearly see I've got roots, I've got where my onion bulb will be, and then you can see the skin of the onion starts changing from brown to green. All right, you never want to plant an onion that high. You're literally wanting to go a max of an inch deep or about a knuckles deep. And remember, we talked about this yesterday, and I talked about it on that video that I linked just a second ago. You need nice, good, fluffy soil, because I'm going to be putting this into the ground an inch deep. I've got to have this in a situation where as this starts to grow, the bulb will be able to expand and push that soil out of its way so that it can grow big. If I tried to put this in thick, heavy clay soil or rock-bound soil, it's gonna meet resistance, and it's not gonna allow that bulb to really break free and get big. So nice, rich, fluffy soil. And so now all that there's left for me to do is literally, I'm gonna take my finger and poke these down, poke holes in here and get these planted. We wanna go about 3 inches apart, because again, if I plant, let me grab another one. If I plant my onions too close together, the resistance they're gonna meet in forming their onion heads is each other. So you wanna give your onions about a 3-inch gap from plant to plant to give them the ample space they need to get their roots, get their nutrients, and form their onion heads. Now, with all that being said, I'm just gonna set the camera up and get to it. Here we go. All right, so as you can see, that's all it takes. So the trick to preparing onions is preparing the bed. And now, so this was a two-fold video. First fold is I made some mistakes with this raised bed that had to be corrected. And the second phase is once I got it prepared and corrected, I was able to plant my onions. So don't forget, if you want a more in-depth onion planting guide, I have that. I've linked it before, and it'll also be tagged in the description below. But I think that's gonna wrap this project up. Now, February is a busy month in the garden. There's lots going on. So stay tuned to Horticulture Geek to see what other videos come out. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, I would love for you to do that. A lot of my viewers, for some reason, aren't subscribed. My YouTube analytics tell me that. So if you're watching this video and haven't subscribed yet, please do that and ring that notification bell. And then that will, every time I put out a new video or post or announcement, you'll be notified in your inbox instead of having to come and search for my new stuff. So please do that if you are so able to do that. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. Maybe it's inspired you to get out into your garden. Now is the perfect time to plant onions for most of the country. So if it's your time to plant onions, this is a super easy and very satisfying project, a good crop to grow. So I highly encourage you to get out and do it if you've never done it before. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those down below. I'll do my best to answer them. And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. But for now, from my garden to yours, I wish you all the best and happy gardening.